Hello, and welcome to the Core Dog Experience in my very first live stream. Trying something new, so bear with me as I learn this and try to get adapted to live streaming process. So just bear with me if any technical glitches come up. I try to be tech savvy, but you never know when you're trying something new for the first time. So again, welcome to the Core Dog Experience, where here I talk basically Ohio State stuff for my fans that are familiar with me and my subscribers who have been with me. So again, um, thank you as I try a new endeavor in this platform. Like I said, I typically talk Ohio State stuff, but expanding because I do know more about college sports than just Ohio State. But I am a Ohio State fan first and foremost, Big Ten fan, and a college fan in general. And to grow the brand, got to talk about a little bit more than just Ohio State. So again, thank you guys. Thank folks for sticking with me and helping me grow as I grow my channel. So, and what a better way to start your first live stream than what I will be discussing today, and that is the Ohio State Lady Buckeyes versus the Iowa Hawkeyes, number 2 and number 6 teams in the nation, and of course, Miss Caitlynn Clark. So be previewing that, my thoughts on the game and how it might play out, or I'm expecting it to play out, and just my comments and stuff regarding that. So should be interesting. Just something about me in the ladies' game. The ladies' game's growing. I'm nice seeing it grow. I'm not a Johnny come lately to this sport, so it has been nice to seeing it grow and continue to grow over these last several years. In large parts, because Miss Clark, it's exploded this year, but the game was growing in general overall. I've been a fan of the women's game going way back to the Katie Smith era, so have a little bit of knowledge about the ladies' game, and that's not a Johnny come lately to the scene. I've been watching the ladies' game for a while, going back, like I said, Katie Smith and how those Buckeye teams back then performed through the Kelsey Mitchell era, through the Jantel Lavender, Samantha Prahalis era. So I've been a fan of ladies' game for a while. So I can talk with some of that, a little bit of knowledge on the ladies side of stuff. So just it's not new to the sport of the women's game. So with that, let's just get into the game, because the game is coming up shortly. So I wanted to get this out there, try it, and see how this live streaming actually works. So again, Core Dog Experience channel, my very first live stream, and we're gonna see how it goes. So if I have any technical difficulties, bear with me. I'm learning how to do this live streaming stuff. But the game, previewing number 2 Ohio State Lady Buckeyes and the number 6 Iowa Hawkeyes at Iowa. It should be a great game. Coming into the season, I believe the Lady Hawkeyes were ranked higher than Ohio State. I think they were predicted to win the conference. I think Indiana was predicted to come in second, and our Lady Buckeyes was down, predicted to come in third. Lady Buckeyes, they got off to a slow start, had some losses up there because they played some really good teams out the gate. USC, and UCLA both took them. And then, of course, they had that loss to the Michigan in December. So by the time the ladies teams hooked up in January, Ohio State already had a loss in the conference. Iowa was riding high. At the time, they were the higher ranked team. I believe they were number 2 at the particular time. They're riding their own winning streak, and Ohio State was able to take them down in Columbus, and we know that set viewing records. It was a big game for the Lady Buckeyes, almost a must-win situation for them, given that point in time, because they already had a loss in the conference. So that game in Columbus was really, really important. And again, let's see here. All right, so let's talk about that game back in January where they matched up for the first time. Like mentioned, Iowa, they were the higher ranked team. They were playing like it. They had the momentum. I think at that time they only had the one loss. They had the loss to Kansas State earlier in the year, but they came into that game riding a nice winning streak. We know Caitlynn was nearing the scoring mark, wasn't quite there yet, but that was a good game. Iowa, they came out and did what Iowa normally does. They built a big lead. And Ohio State normally they came out what they normally do as well as what has plagued this team, not only last season but in the earlier losses this season. They get behind. They get behind big. Happened against USC, UCLA. They got behind big and was not able to come back. Same thing happened in that January matchup. They got behind Iowa in that first half there. But unlike the other games, they were able to keep contact. They were able to keep it close. Cody McMahon and Jacy Sheldon made enough plays to keep the game within striking distance of where they were able to make that second half push, that fourth quarter push, and eventually tie the game up and take it into overtime. And I think that was the start of Cody McMahon getting out of her slump. Because those first three games, at the beginning of the season, Cody McMahon, the reigning Big Ten freshman of the year, she had that, would like to say, that sophomore slump, so to speak. She got out the gate slow, wasn't doing her normal stuff that we got accustomed to seeing her doing in her freshman year. That Iowa game was her breakout game, so to speak. She had a big game, and she was basically unstoppable, in particular in the second half when Ohio State was making their comeback. And they were able to tie it up, erase the 12-point deficit, and was able to tie it up. And I think, and then overtime, Jacy Sheldon and Cody McMahon, they took the game over, and Ohio State pretty much was unstoppable once overtime started. Jacy, she does what she always does. She's an energizer, but she never stops. She never gets tired, and she imposed her will on the Iowa team in that second half, and in particular that overtime matchup. And Caitlynn. Now, Caitlynn had a game, 45 points, but I think she wore down in that second half, and overtime in particular. And I'll say Iowa, they built up the 12-point lead, and they had a good first half like teams can do against Ohio State. In particular, if you can withstand the press. And I think Iowa did a good job against the press in that first half in January. But Ohio State, they wear you down because they can throw multiple bodies at you. And I think eventually it caught up to Iowa, caught up to Caitlynn. She had the 45 points, but you could see she was gassed in the later stages of the fourth quarter and overtime. She was gassed. It's not so much physically, but just the mental strain of having to deal with Ohio State's constant pressure. And I think that eventually got to Iowa and the Lady Hawkeyes, and instead helping Ohio State win that game back in January. So coming into the season, I always thought Ohio State, when I saw the initial predicted order of finish, I thought it was sort of off because I always thought Ohio State was the better team coming into the season. So I was like, got them ranked to come in third. I just didn't see it. They had Iowa picked, I believe it was Iowa to pick to win the conference. But I was like, Iowa, they lost, in my opinion, they lost too much. They lost Cinzano. Cinzano was a big piece of Iowa's team. Last year, they lost her, and I don't think they effectively replaced her. In particular, when you think of who Ohio State brought in via the transfer portal and Celeste Taylor, the reigning defensive player of the year out of the ACC. And I thought that was just a match made in heaven, given Ohio State's brand of play. I thought she was almost an ideal replacement for Taylor Mikesell, sort of replacing offense in Mikesell and her three-point shot for defense and what Celeste Taylor brings defensively, again, making that press just that more effective. And I don't think Iowa brought anybody in or has had a sufficient replacement for Sanzano. She was a perfect company not role player, because she was a star. She was a good low post player. She was a perfect fit for Caitlynn. You had the perimeter and low post player and Clark and Sanzano. I think they complemented each other well. They lost Sanzano, and I just didn't think Iowa had the pieces around Caitlynn to be predicted to come in first. Not with what Ohio State was bringing in. Not only they bring in Celeste Taylor, but Tyra Parks from Michigan State, I thought was a big pickup as well, because she addresses some of the deficiencies Ohio State had last year, and that was defending the low post. So Parks has been great, a big addition in that area, and being able to address that, because Manzano had big games against Ohio State. Anyone that had a good low post player last year gave Ohio State problems, and I think Parks has shored that up a lot this year. Rebecca's gotten better, but she's not a pure low post player. So I thought those two additions, Parks and Taylor, I thought that put Ohio State over the top. I thought they were going to win the conference, and lo and behold, they did win it, the regular season outright. And I think those two additions have been key. But the January matchup, Ohio State won it in overtime. So what has happened since the January matchup? How did we get to where we're at now? I said I was right in that winning streak, and since then they've had a couple hiccups since that game. Of course, we know what happened at the Nebraska game, but then they had that tough road loss at Indiana. Meanwhile, Ohio State, they've just been on the road. I think they've gotten progressively better and better and better since the teams have gone on. And I think they've gotten better as the play of Celeste Taylor on the offensive end has improved, because she was a liability in terms of scoring. She had the defensive stuff, but now Celeste Taylor, she's a threat offensively, not only from the mid-range, but three-point range as well. She's not quite up there with Mikesell, because I don't think few folks can shoot like Taylor Mikesell can. But Celeste Taylor, these last few games, she is really effective from the three-point line. She's really picked up her offense, and that just goes in flow with what she does defensively. And I think Ohio State now is probably playing some of the best basketball that they've played in quite a while. Like I said, Cody McMahon's gotten her groove back. I think she's had it ever since that Iowa game, and she's just continued to elevate their game. So I think Ohio State as a team is playing perfect basketball for this time of year. You want to be playing your best basketball going into March. And they've had some great road wins, because it's hard to win on the road in the conference, as we all know, but they went into Michigan State and won, Illinois and won, at Penn State won. Some great runs on the road. Those teams are good teams. Ask Indiana. Illinois knocked off Indiana. They blew out Nebraska, and we know what Nebraska did to Iowa. So Ohio State has been playing some really good ball, and the key to all of that has been Jacy Sheldon. Jacy Sheldon, she came back for a reason. She's played like it. She's been on a mission, and she missed a lot. She missed a lot of last season. Last year, she with that injury, and they had that nice deep tournament run. She got a taste of what this team could do when they're all healthy. So she made the decision to return for her senior year. And boy, is Ohio State Nation glad that she has done that. She has been the unquestioned leader of the team. She spearheads that press. Everyone feeds off her. Again, that January matchup, she was a large reason why they were able to come back and overtake Iowa in overtime, was based on her play. So, again, she's our own superstar. She's Ohio State superstar. And she is playing really well. And it's just, and she's like I said, she is the thing that makes Ohio State go. We click as Jacy Sheldon clicks. As we know, that first game, speaking of the rise in the women's game, we know that game was in Columbus, set an attendance record in large part because of Caitlynn naturally, but Ohio State has a good team, and I believe we almost got to 19,000 at the arena. Probably would have had more eyeballs on it, but I do think the game was on Peacock, which is to the dismay of a lot of folks. A lot of folks do not like the Peacock channel. They do not like the Peacock channel. I think this game's on Fox. This upcoming game is on Fox, so we'll be able to get some more eyes on it. But they're not feeling the Peacock game back in January. But JC goes as the team goes. But the big thing in that game, of course, we know was Coty McMahon. Like she had a slump. She was slumping in that game. She had a breakout game against Iowa back in January. They could not do anything with her. She was a menace down low. So I think she got Stokey in foul trouble. She got all their low post players in foul trouble. And they needed that game from her because, like I said, Iowa had built up, and Coty was able to do enough to keep the game close. And then heading into the fourth quarter, her and JC and the rest of the Ohio State defense did their stuff. But Coty McMahon was a problem, and she's been a problem ever since January, ever since she's gotten her groove back, so to speak. But so January, that's what's going on. January, what's going on since January, how we got to where we're at. Ohio State has built their lead. Like I said, Iowa's had a couple hiccups. Indiana took them out. Of course, that lost to Nebraska. Indiana themselves, they've had a couple hiccups. They lost to Illinois, plus also Indiana's lost to Ohio State and both Iowa, even though Indiana did avenge that loss to Iowa. So coming into this game, it was very important for Ohio State to sort of wrap up the title because you did not want to go into this game with Iowa on senior night, Caitlynn Clark's last regular season game in front of her home fans, having to win the game for any piece of the conference title. So Ohio State being able to wrap up the Big Ten regular season championship was very important in my mind, to wrap that up and not have to worry about that in this particular game because it's going to be a problem already. But having with that on the line, it would have been a real uphill battle with that on the line. But Ohio State, fortunately, they were able to wrap it up. They handled Maryland, and they avenged their only conference loss to Michigan State. So that Michigan win gave them the conference regular season championship outright, gave them the number one seed into the Big Ten tournament, and most likely a number one seed in March Madness, regardless of what happens here. I think they give themselves a little bit of cushion because this is going to be a hard place to go in here and win, given everything else that's going to be taking place in that game, which you will get into. But I think the committee will look at all the circumstances surrounding this should Ohio State lose and not knock them off that number one thing unless they do really bad in the Big Ten tournament. But I think Ohio State, for the most part, has a number one seed locked up. So it's really important that they took care of business against Maryland and Michigan, and they did that. So, but big game for a lot of reasons. That one reason was eliminated for Ohio State then, but let's face this is a huge game. First of all, the Clark phenomena aside, it was going to be a big game regardless. Anytime you have a top 10 matchup, it's going to be big. So again, Ohio State comes in here now, sort of flip-flop from the first meeting in January. Ohio State comes in as the second-ranked team. Iowa comes as the number 6 ranked team. Big, again, mentioned Caitlynn Clark. It's going to be her last regular season game in front of her home fans, so you know they are going to be pumped. The tickets that game was probably off the chain trying to get in to see this game. That factor alone, it's a revenge game also for Iowa. They said they lost to Ohio State. Ohio State broke that winning streak that Iowa was riding. So it was going to be everything from Iowa's standpoint is going to be huge. And it's, like I said, well, really great Ohio State was able to wrap up the regular season title before this game, because it's going to be a monster game. But it's going to be a revenge game for Iowa. Coming off the loss, they got not only revenge game, but Iowa, they have, in my mind, opinion, they got a little bit more to play for. They still have a chance to move up to a number 1 seed, should they be able to beat Ohio State. I think, again, as mentioned, I think Ohio State, barring a blowout loss, and as long as they have a should they lose, as long as they have a blowout loss and they do go well in the tournament, I still think Ohio State maintains their number 1 seed. So I think Iowa has a little bit more to play for, because they still have a chance to move up a line in the tournament. Secondly, again, a revenge game for Iowa. They lost. Caitlynn Clark, she had her 45 points. It wasn't enough, so I'm imagining Caitlynn Clark, she's going to try and do some more to get their team over the top. Another big day, same for Iowa. Just like I said, this is their senior day. They got a lot of outgoing seniors. It's always hard to beat a team on their senior day. I probably wouldn't have picked Ohio State to be your senior day opponent, but it is what it is for Iowa's standpoint. But it's going to be a senior day. I don't know how many, think got 4 or 5 seniors participating in senior day. So in and of itself, it's going to be a big game for Iowa. Like I said, they have a lot to win for, a lot to play for. And lastly, and I say a revenge game because they beat Iowa in January. But I do think Ohio State was the last Big Ten team to go in there and beat them a couple years ago, where they shared the title. So the last time these two teams met on Iowa's home court, Ohio State beat them. So all this is riding. All this is in the back of Iowa's players' mind. But first and foremost, it's Caitlynn Clark's last game. It's going to be big. It's going to be televised on Fox, not Peacock. Going to have a lot of eyes on this game. Top 10 matchup. Caitlynn, the mega star, Caitlynn Clark against a team of stars. I think Ohio State has a lot of stars. Like I mentioned, I think they had a better team overall coming into the season. Because I think they got at least 3 or 4 WNBA players on their roster. I know we think about the WNBA. It ain't all that. But Ohio State they got some WNBA players on their roster, in Jacy Sheldon, Celeste Taylor, Cody McMahon. I think Taylor Theory's a potential WNBA player. So Ohio State, they got a team of stars, and of course Iowa has the mega stars. So it's going to be a good one. To me, a lot of more motivation for Iowa to win this game. But Ohio State, yeah, they wrapped up the Big Ten season title, but they still have some stuff to play for as well. I don't think, but me saying that they wrapped up the regular season, I don't think they're going to go in there and lay down. But I don't think that's how Kevin McCuff's team plays. Regardless, I think they're going to want to go in there and win it. And you talk to anytime teams go on the road, it's hard to win on the road. But what's the main thing a lot of players say, whether you're going to another team's home court, home field? The number one they say is the best thing to do is to go in there and silence the home team's crowd. That might be motivated. What better way to go in there and spoil Caitlynn Clark the last game of the regular season, to go in there and beat them again, to prove that January wasn't a fluke and the last time they played in Iowa wasn't a fluke. Because I think last year Iowa took them out in the tournament. Iowa gave them some pretty good spankings last season in the Big Ten tournament, I believe. But wouldn't it be, if I'm thinking like that, from Ohio State, wouldn't that be great to go in there on Caitlynn Clark's last game on their senior night and beat them? That's a lot of motivation for folks right there. And plus, Ohio State, they still want to protect their number one ranking. I do think it's given how the game goes, I don't think they're going to lose their number one ranking in March Madness, regardless of what happens here. As long as they make it to the championship game in the Big Ten tournament, I think their number one seed is protected. I think Iowa has a chance to move up and have 2 Big Ten teams with number one seeds. So again, my first live stream. So again, for folks that are catching me for the first time, big Ohio State fan, trying to do some more and branch out as you're watching this. Hopefully, if you're liking it, please hit that like button, or if you're intrigued to watch some of my other content, please feel free to do that. And if you're liking that, please hit the like button and subscribe and visit and keep visiting a brother down the road and keep giving me some looks and some looks as I try to grow this thing out. But the game. So keys to the game. So we got motivation. What's the motivational factors for Iowa? What's the motivational factors for Ohio State? For me, the keys to the game is quite simple in terms of Iowa. They need to get Caitlynn some help. Caitlynn needs some help. We saw in the Ohio State game. She scored 45 points and they lost. And I think it's shown that when she scores 40 or more points, if it's a blowout, it's 40 points. But in close games, when it's 40 or more points, it doesn't dip a lot, but they win in percentage. They do have a little more losses when she's forced to score because she's carrying the load. Like last season, she had Sanzano. She doesn't have Sanzano this one. No one has stepped on a consistent basis to help her out for her team. It's someone different. There's no one person that she can rely on. And that's why I think Ohio State just a more complete team. They have more weapons. If Caitlynn has an off night, there's a good chance Iowa's going to lose. If Caitlynn has to score too much, Iowa might lose, depending on the opponent. She's able to get a Robin. I practice that too. If she's able to get a Robin to her Batman, it's going to be they're tough to beat. Against the lesser teams, she doesn't really need it, but the teams like of Ohio State's caliber, she needs someone to help her. She needs someone to step up and help her. May it be Stokey, Molly Davis. She needs someone else to come out and Kate Martin. She needs someone else to help her on a consistent basis. She can't do it by herself. I do think Ohio State finally wore her down in that January meeting come overtime. Like I said, maybe not physically because she's like Jacy Sheldon. She has a motor that doesn't stop. But I think mentally, having to deal with that press for a full 40-plus minutes can wear on you. And I think she got worn down coming to overtime periods because she was doing everything. She scored 45 points, and scoring 45 points against that team, given all their defensive people, that's saying something because she scored it, but she had to work for it. So she's going to need some help first and foremost. And she'll probably get it because support players, they normally play better in front of their crowd. So I'm assuming someone's going to step up. Someone else is going to make some plays and give her the support she needs at home because they do play better at home. It's the role player and support player. So I'm assuming she's going to get more help, and she's going to need to get more help, especially with Ohio State comes in there for mindset of wanting to win and spoil the night. She's going to need someone else to step up. They can't expect her to do it all. Then last they have to do a better job on Cody McMahon. Like Cody had her breakout game against them. They had no one in the low post that could stop her, and she got their low post players in the foul triple. So those are some of the keys to the game for Iowa. First and foremost, get Caitlynn some help. Got to have someone else step up, be it Kate Martin or some Stokey in the low post. Someone needs to step up, and they can't rely on Caitlynn to do everything because Ohio State has a team, the caliber of athletes to make life difficult for her. Regardless of how many points she scores, she's going to have to work for them. So if she gets some consistent help, Iowa has a good chance. They do a better job on Cody, Iowa has a good chance. I think those are the two main things for Iowa. It's quite simple. Caitlynn can't do it by herself, even though she's capable of doing it because we've seen her. Like, so she almost single-handedly beat Ohio State in Columbus. So she is more than capable of doing it because she's that good. But it'd be nice if she had some help. I'm sure she's thinking the same thing too. Can I get a little bit of help, please? Somebody. For Ohio State, I think it's simple for Ohio State. I said they got the defensive players to throw at Caitlynn Clark. And again, I just want to emphasize here on how important Celeste Taylor has been to this team. The reigning defensive player of the year in the ACC, I think was the perfect fit for her coming over to Ohio State and Ohio State's brand of basketball. And I think she is what has put Ohio State over the top this season. And she's a body that we can throw at Caitlynn Clark. Taylor Theory's another body that on the defensive side we can throw at Caitlynn Clark. Taylor is one of the most athletically gifted people on the roster. Defensively, she's a beast. I wish she'd be a little more aggressive on the offensive end, but defensively, Ohio State has these two players we can throw at Caitlynn. You ain't stopping Caitlynn Clark, but make her work. And I think they did that. She got she got her 45 points, but they made her work for it. Not only do you have these two, you got Jacy Sheldon, as previously mentioned. She's a real good on-the-ball defender. Ricky Harris, they can bring off the bench, real good on-ball defender. Madison Green, off the bench, real good on-the-ball defender. So Ohio State has the number of bodies. And when I say, a lot of times you hear people say bodies, they're just throwing players out there to do stuff. When I say bodies for Ohio State, these are all defensive type players who can get up in your grill and make life difficult for you. They got skills, so to speak. So defensively, Ohio State has the players and the athletes to make life difficult for Caitlynn. That's why I think it's important for her to get some help this game. But Ohio State does. They get the pressure, the press going, and just stay with it, because a lot of teams can handle it the first, second quarter, but by the time the third and fourth quarter rolls around, they're mentally drained. So I think Ohio State can keep the game close, regardless of how folks are able to deal with that press in the first half. Don't get overwhelmed. I think they'll have a good chance because, as we know, Ohio State has been a great second half team. But in particular, this season, they've come out in the third quarter and they have literally destroyed opponents in the third quarter. 5-6 point games quickly ballooned to 20-point deficits for the opponents, and they could never recover. Keep it close, weather the storm. Clark, she's also going for Maravich's scoring title. So the Iowa crowd's going to be pumped. They got to be ready to weather that storm in the first quarter, because that's where they've had their issues. I don't know what Kevin McCuff says at halftime, but he needs to inject that halftime speech into the first quarter speech. Because when Ohio State comes out in that third quarter, they have literally buried opponents in the first, in the second, at the beginning of the second half. So by the time the fourth quarter rolls around, the game's pretty much been over, and that's been really consistent during their winning streak. It's just destroying folks in the third quarter. So if they can weather that first quarter storm in Iowa, stay close, make the game close, so where their press starts taking over and maybe starts wearing down Iowa some, they got a good chance of winning the game. Cody, she had a monster game in January. I think it's important that she stays out of foul trouble. She needs to keep her some of her temper in check, so to speak, because she gets frustrated. These last couple games for Ohio State against Penn State and Illinois, she's gotten frustrated and she's gotten teed up. She needs to stay, and tees, they count as fouls, so she has to sit. So she needs to stay out of foul trouble, keep her composure, and try to do again what she did in January. I'm sure Iowa's going to try to switch up some stuff so they don't let her go off like she did in January. And with that in mind, she needs to keep her composure, because they're going to need her in this game, what she brings to the table. So she's like, she's out of that sophomore slump. She may not have the height, but she's just so strong. She reminds me of the player from Utah, Pele. They don't have the height, but no one can do nothing with them. And she reminds me of the Utah player, Pele, because you look at Pele, and I saw that game when they played against just going off the tangent here, when they played against South Carolina, they couldn't do nothing with her. And Cody is very similar in the low posts. Teams have a hard time stopping Cody. She gets that spin move going. See, it's a very quick spin move. You can't do nothing with it. When she gets going to a head of steam to the basket, you got to be foolish to stand in front of her because she's going to bowl you over. But Cody, she's a problem. But she needs to stay out of foul trouble this game because they are going to need her in the low post. And again, Taylor Theory, keys of the game, again, their defensive pressure, they need to maintain it throughout the course of the game. Sometimes Kevin McGuff draws it back if teams are able to have success against it in the first quarter, in the first half. But I think if they keep with it, like they've done, because teams have been able to overcome the press in the first quarter, by the time the third and fourth quarter rolls around, they're mentally drained and having to do it. It's just a lot of, because sometimes it seems like it's 6-on-5 out there that they're running all over the place with Jacy, Ricky, Celeste, Taylor. So they can keep that on and fluster Iowa a little bit. I think that'll go a long way for Ohio State in winning this game. And then just got to do just the opposite of what I said Iowa needs to do. They need to find someone else to help Caitlynn. But I'm Ohio State. I'm trying to keep all the Robins in check. I said Caitlynn needs a Robin to her Batman. Like that first game, they kept other players in check. Caitlynn went off for her 45 points, but by the time the fourth quarter rolled around, overtime rolled around, the other players on Iowa Scott, they're standing around looking at Caitlynn, waiting for Caitlynn to bail them out. So if I'm Ohio State, I'm doing my best. I'm going to do what I need to do against Caitlynn, make life difficult as possible for her. But at the second time, I'm not going to let a second player go off, because they allow a second player to go off, it's going to be really difficult for Ohio State to come out of there with a win. Because Megan, like I said, it's a mega star in Caitlin Clark versus a team of a lot of superstars. I think Jacy Sheldon is a superstar, Celeste Taylor, Taylor Theory, Cody McMahon, and I think they got a much deeper bench than Iowa. Those are the main keys of the game. Now, if everyone is able to impose their will, so to speak, my head says Iowa. Let's just say my head says, because it's at Iowa, I think they got a lot more to play for. My head says Iowa in the closing game, but my heart says Ohio State. Got to be the homer. I think Ohio State can pull it out. I do think overall, in the whole totality of things, they are the better team. I think their press, if they really ramp it up, because we've seen when they ramp it up, teams have difficulty dealing with it. And it's not the live turnovers, and they force teams into travels. They force teams in just throwing bad passes where it's, dead ball turnovers. It's almost effective as a steal or getting in the passing lane. So if they're able to do that and stay close, I think eventually they will wear Iowa down. And I think like I said, the head says Iowa because all the thing that's riding for Iowa, but I think the heart's going to go with Ohio State in the close one. So I do think they want to keep momentum heading into the Big Ten tournament and into March Madness. So that's my real quick analysis of the game. I got Ohio State in the close one because I just think they have the overall better team. I think they may play out the same way it did in January. Iowa gets out early. They do their stuff, even with better support play around her. I do think Ohio State has the team and the bodies to eventually wear her down and again win in a close game. I don't think they have they're not scared of going in there because they did last time they played in Iowa, they beat them. So a lot. It's going to be a good game. I wish I could buy a ticket to it. That's going to be a good game. But I do think Ohio State, my heart says Ohio State, head says Iowa, but I got to go with my heart, and I think Ohio State in a close game, a close, exciting game. I do think both teams are going to be well positioned for. So that's my wrap up for the preview of the game that's about to kick off very shortly. But I've been wrong before. But I do think been known to be wrong with some of my predictions. But I do think Ohio State, they're riding that winning streak. Once the teams get on the winning streak, it's hard to knock them off their winning streak. So I do think Kevin McGuff is going to have them ready to play and go in there and deal with everything the crowd has to throw at them. So they're gonna be throwing the stuff at. Gonna be a wild, raucous environment. Not only did we beat them in January, but we had the court storming incident in January. So the players, Iowa's players may have forgotten about it, but the fans ain't. The fans have not forgotten about Caitlynn getting hitting the ground after during the court storming incident. So they're going to be raucous. So Ohio State, if they can withstand everything that Iowa's going to be throwing at them crowd-wise, the environment, the atmosphere, I think they do have a good chance of going there and winning a close, hard-fought game. And getting these teams ready for the March Madness Big Ten tournament. Ohio State's going in again. It's a number 1 overall seed. I think they protect their seeding heading into March Madness as long as they have a good showing in the Big Ten tournament. And depending on how things play out, Iowa has a chance to move up to number 1 seed. So that is my quick thing on the preview of Ohio State versus Iowa and how I think it's going to play out. Both teams getting ready for the big dance. So I think both teams, Big Ten had a good showing last year in the tournament. I think we got 3 to 4 teams to the Elite Eight. Of course, Iowa made it all the way. Ohio State got to the Elite Eight and ran into, like I said, that low post presence they had problems with last year in Virginia Tech. But I think a lot of the Big Ten teams are well positioned to do well this year, including outside of Ohio State and Iowa. You got Indiana, got Nebraska team, Michigan State, should they make it. Only down to Michigan, Illinois. Ohio State's it was a real good competitive conference this year. I think only second to the Pac-12 and their number of teams that they had and stuff they were doing this year. But I think Big Ten was a really good competitive conference. But I think sets up the teams well heading into the tournament. I do believe a quick look. This is what the brackets are looking like so far, the first projections. And if nothing outlandish happens during these conference tournaments, I can see it staying pretty much this way. I do think Iowa is the one team that has a chance to move up should they beat Ohio State and have a really good tournament showing. So these projections could change. And again, the Big Ten will be well positioned moving into to the March Madness. With that said, is there anyone out there that can knock off these folks? They are rolling yet again. They almost, I won't say they're a little unbeatable, but we said that last year. And we know what happened last year. Iowa went in there and knocked them off. And I don't think South Carolina, as good as they've been this year, I don't think they're as good as they were last year when Iowa knocked them off. But they're going to be a tough out. I would say they're coming up with a chip on their shoulder, South Carolina, but all those players are gone. This is pretty much a whole new lineup. So I don't know if that chip on the shoulder outside of Don Staley is relevant here, but they're going to be a tough out regardless. Could be that old adage, they're undefeated and the pressure may mount up trying to go undefeated throughout the tournament. So all it takes is one game now, and they can slip up. We saw it last year. Like I said, I made my predictions last year. I thought they were going to win it last year. Iowa knocked them off last year. And I said, Iowa got this. And then we know what happened in the championship game. LSU knocked off Iowa. So anything can happen in March Madness. It's about the matchups. It's all about the matchups. And we know come tournament time, it's all about guard play. And I think our conference in particular, the teams at the top of the Big Ten are well positioned in terms of guard play. I mentioned all the Ohio State guards we have. Of course, Iowa has the megastar in Caitlynn Clark. Indiana has some really good guards, and just got good guard play across the board in the Big Ten. And this comes down to guard play and matchups. And from an Ohio State standpoint, I think they are better defensively last year. Because last year, if you got past their press, their half-court defense wasn't as good. This year, not so much. They're really good in half-court defense as well as the press. The low post thing that gave them issues last year have not surfaced as much this year, because one thing Kevin McGuff has done probably better than any other coach on the Ohio State campus is utilize that transfer portal. Until this year, when Ohio State just went crazy in the transfer portal in football. But up to that point, Kevin McGuff has been a beast in bringing in players off the transfer portal. Like this year, he brought in Celeste Taylor and Parks, who the center out of Michigan State, who I think has just sort of flown under the radar because he's not the big name. But Ohio State was a liability in the low post defensively last year. As good as Rebecca is, she's not a low post. She's gotten better this year, but she's not a true low post defensive player. She can get bullied somewhat. Parks, not so much. She has more of an attitude. She can go in there. She can hold her ground more. So I think Ohio State is a little better positioned this year to even make a deeper run, because those low post players that gave them problems last year, it really hasn't surfaced as much this year because he brings in Parks and she's able to stabilize that somewhat. So they got the guard play, and a lot of teams are not familiar with the press that Ohio State can bring. Big Ten teams see it every year. They prepare for it. They know what's coming, and they still can't deal with it for the most part. So these teams seeing it for the first time, it's going to cause issues press-wise. So I think Ohio State can make a deep run. Caitlynn, she doesn't have Cinzano, which I think it's just underrated how much they miss Cinzano, because I said he was the perfect inside-outside threat that Iowa had. That I don't know if they had that this year. Caitlynn can carry him a long way, but like some of the issues they may have with Ohio State, deeper teams may be able to not stop her, because you don't stop someone like Caitlin Clark, but you can make life difficult for her. And if she can't find someone else to step up and help her along the way, they can get as far as Caitlin, and some help can get her, because Caitlin, she's not going to be able to do it by herself. She's going to need someone to step up and help her, but she's able to get that person. And it doesn't even have to be the same person, just someone to help her along the way. I think they can make another deep run. I think Indiana, again, they can make deep runs. A lot of the top tier teams in the Big Ten, I think, are positioned to make a deep run. And then you can never discount Maryland. I think they were an Elite Eight team last year. Brenda, she knows how to get her team ready to play for the tournament time. So we got some tournament tested teams. South Carolina, they look good, but I don't think they're unbeatable, because I don't think they're as good as they were last year. It's all about matchups, and a lot of new faces, not a young players. At this time, they sort of battle tested, but it hasn't been on the line like it's going to be in the tournament time. And we don't know, nerves may get to some of these players. If folks are able to hang around with them, we might see. But they're going to be a tough out, but I do think the Big Ten teams are well positioned to make deep runs in this year's Final Four. I don't see the projections changing all that much. If any one team has a chance to make a move, it is Iowa. I do think they have an opportunity to move up to a number one line should they beat Ohio State and play well in the Big Ten tournament. Now, again, this is my first live stream for folks that are seeing it for the first time. So if you're liking this, intrigued by it, go watch some of my other videos. And if you're liking the content, please subscribe. Like I said, I'm a Big Ten. I'm a Ohio State fan first and foremost. Most of my stuff is Ohio State related. Big Ten fan second, and then college in general. So if you're liking the stuff, please hit the like button. If you want to come back and check some other stuff, go down that Core Dog rabbit hole. Please do so, and subscribe if you're liking what you are seeing. Moving on. Of course, Caitlin Clark, her last game, she recently declared. Got to talk about it. She was trending in all the sports right now. Did you think I was going to get out here and not mention Caitlin Clark just a little bit? Just a little bit. She is what is trending. She is what's trending in all of college sports right now. So got to talk about Miss Caitlin Clark. She is a phenomenal player, to say the least. She deserves all the accolades she's getting and everything that's coming her way. She deserves all the praise. She is definitely one of the best players to ever grace the sport, not only what she does on the court, but what she has brought to the sport in terms of eyeballs. Like I said, I've been watching ladies basketball going back to the Katie Smith era. So it's nice to see it grow. Not only with, but women's college sports in general has grown tremendously since then. And I think the internet has done a lot with that, which I think has aided Caitlynn's rise, and she's delivered. So she has been great for that. But not date. The debate is she is the GOAT. Is she the GOAT? The GOAT. My little 2 cents. Just my 2 cents. That's all I'm throwing in there. There can only be one GOAT. And Caitlynn is definitely in the conversation. But my 2 cents worth. Oh my 2 cents worth. She's definitely in the conversation. But for me, just in the nutshell, because I don't want to go too deep into it, I think she's a great player. For those that saying she's not great because of certain things I don't agree with. I think she is one of the best players to grace the game. But in terms of the GOAT, greatest of all time, like I said, there can only be one. And when you look at it in that component, there's a lot of great players. And so when I got that many greats, when you have that many great players, you gotta nitpick. And it comes down to that person who's rating them, that their own personal preference on what they look at when they're trying to pit one and over the other and stuff of that nature. So you take everything that Caitlynn Clark does, she definitely deserves to be in that conversation. And how can she not be? Because she not only, like I said, what she's done for the game, the eyes she's brought to it, but then, like I said, she's the all-time scoring leader, not only NCAA but college. And then going to go down to NCAA versus collegiate. She's the all-time scorer. She's going to be after this game, so I'm sure she's going to pass Pete Maravich. So she's going to make that a moot point. So she's great, period, hands down thing. But is she the GOAT? And then. So then you got to bring up all the other great players from the past, and you got to start nitpicking. And this is one of those great debates, always open. Matters comes down to people's opinions on stuff, and no one opinion is wrong as long as you're able to substantiate it, in my view, by other stuff. You just can't say stuff out there and be silly. But to me, Caitlynn Clark, she is definitely up there. But in terms of greatness, and I looked around, I know who my folks are. Because I was just curious what other writers and stuff were saying outside of, oh, she's not great because of this, not that, because of the titles. And I guess those have been floating around out there. And she ain't great because she hasn't won the title. For some people, that's important. Others, not so much. Again, it's a matter of preference. For me, I happen to, when you get to nitpicking and stuff like that, I tend to favor folks that have won a championship. And that's just, like I said, my own 2 cents worth. Not right, wrong. The folks that want to argue the other way, I'm happy with it because she is a great player, and arguments can be made on both sides. Just my personal preference, not only what you do on an individual basis, but how does that equate to your team goals. So anytime this comes up, it came up briefly, not as much, but it came up briefly with Kelsey Plum when she got near the scoring mark, but not as much because Kelsey Plum, let's face it, she's not the mega star Caitlynn Clark is. So it got amplified somewhat with Caitlynn and with Caitlynn being in the conversation. But it's been had before. The GOAT, the UConn players, it's been had before with them because they have brought multiple championships to the table when they have these discussions. So just for me, like I said, my own personal 2 cents, I take in all the individual compliments, and then when you're trying to nitpick, to me, I factor in the team stuff as well. Caitlynn, that's the one thing missing from her resume, in my opinion. When you're talking about the greats, the best of the best, who is the greatest of the great? Probably when you get there, there'll only be one. Can only be one, and for me, I go back and forth with it. Most of the stuff I've seen and read from other folks, they've had the same group of people always mentioned. It's always a combination of Breonna Stewart, Diana Taurasi, Cheryl Miller, Shamika Holtzclaw, Candace Parker. Sometimes some people throw Lisa Leslie in there. Kelsey Plum's names come up. But when I think about it the most, I always come down to one of these two, just for me. These are the two I always come back to. I got to see them both play a little. Cheryl, not so much, because he just wasn't women's basketball wasn't as big back then. To me, like I said, my two always banter back and forth between these two. It's just I'm not a big UConn fan per se. I'm not a big Gino fan per se, but you got to respect what he's done with that program and the players that have come through that program. And then I was there during Cheryl Miller's. I wasn't as focused in, because I didn't really start watching women's basketball until, like I said, Katie Smith, and she came in a few years later when she started her All-State career. But I was familiar with Cheryl Miller and who she was. Never really watched her play. Diana, I got to see her play a lot. So more times than not, when I had this conversation with myself, and I go back and forth with myself, I always come back to Diana, and that's part of that recency bias, because I'm just more familiar with her game and what she's done. And I think unfavorable, probably shouldn't, but what she's done on the professional level as well as coming to play. So I always tend to lean towards Diana Taurasi, but this time next week I might say Cheryl Miller again, and who knows, because Breonna Stewart, she in terms of championships, she has 4 straight NCAA titles, but I tend to like the perimeter players who handle the ball just a little bit more. Again, my own personal preference. It always comes down to them too. But if Clark were to stay, that's why I was hoping Clark would stay, because she has the scoring title. I think if Clark had stayed and put that scoring thing so out of reach, it would have been like one of those Bob Beeman type mythical records. Because how many years did it take Beeman's record to get broken in the long jump? If Clark had stayed, I think she would have put that so far out there. It just been one of those things of absolute legends. But she's declared for the WNBA. So we see. So this is her last hurrah, because I do think if she's able, because one of the arguments made, and I've seen this when folks bring up the titles, well, they played on loaded teams. Yeah, Cheryl Miller teams. You look back, she had the McGee sisters. Her team was loaded. Diana, we know how those UConn teams were loaded. But the thing is, these were the best players on those loaded teams. So, and they have the individual hardware to back up the team championship. So they played on loaded teams. That's true. They had the support around them to get those championships. That's true. That's why I go back to Caitlin Clark. Given the stuff we have talked about with Caitlin, that she does not have that type of supporting cast. And I think that's part of the reason why she is moving on, because given the current roster, I don't think she feels she can win the NCAA championship. She had a good chance last year when she had Cinzano. If she would have won that last year, to me, that one championship picture up there if these folks that have multiple, just because of that very argument, the support staff. Like those UConn teams were loaded. Cheryl Miller's team was loaded. Caitlin Clark's team, not so much. So if she's able to do it, she's almost doing it single-handedly by herself. And I think that changed the whole conversation if she would have won it, especially if she wins it this year, because I think she's playing with even less this year. So if she's able to do that, we have to rethink some of that stuff so much, because I don't think she has the team around her to pull it off, to get these titles that some of these other folks have had. But because I equate it to to what LeBron did in Cleveland. Excuse me. What LeBron did, he brought that city a championship, and to me, that elevated LeBron a lot. Because what's Cleveland been since then? What were they before then? What had they been since then? To me, she would have that type of effect on Iowa. If she's able to bring home a championship, given that roster, I think that one championship will stack up to these players that have multiple championships, because these ladies played on loaded teams. Caitlynn Clark, not so much. So if she's able to do it this year, yeah, I might be replacing one of these pictures with Caitlynn Clark because she's that good. And if she's able to elevate her team to that status, boom. Because, like I said, she doesn't have a lot around her, and I think that was don't want to go there. I think that was evident in the Nebraska game, because she wanted to win. She wanted to break the record at her home court, and I don't think there's no crime in saying she wanted to break the record at home. Why not do it in front of your fans? I have no qualms about her wanting to break it at home, because she had a 14-point lead, and she figured her teammates could hold on to that 14-point lead at Nebraska. They couldn't do it. Granted, Nebraska made some incredible shots. Jacy Sheldon went off, but they couldn't hold the lead. So that just emphasizes the point. She does not have the team around her to probably get these titles that some of these other players do. And I do think that's why she's going on to the WNBA. Too much energy not to have the supporting cast. And she's losing 5 senior. And she's losing half the roster this year. She got senior day have 5 or 6 people. So Iowa's going to be a completely different team next year. And Caitlynn's like, nah, I'm good. I don't have it. If I can't get it done this year, I'm not going to do it. And I don't blame her one bit. So, but yeah. So again, those are, like I said, Cheryl Miller, Diana Taurasi. Those are my 2 I kick around back and forth right now. Recency bias, I would say Diana, and because I'm more familiar with Diana than I am with what Cheryl Miller's game is. But like I said, my all-time favorite before we get out here, because the game's coming up, but my all-time favorite basketball player, like I said, I started watching during the Katie Smith era. She's my all-time favorite women's basketball player. She ain't gonna make no GOAT list collegiately, but her professional career will stack up to anybody's. Period. Katie Smith, she is my all-time. But there was a Mount Rushmore of Ohio State athletes, men, women, football, basketball. Katie Smith would be on that list because I like Katie Smith that much. She got me into watching women's basketball. Her freshman year, she took Ohio State to their only NCAA championship where she got taken down by Cheryl Swoops. Talking about pissing off some Iowa folks. Just mention Cheryl Swoops, and they will get bad. But Cheryl Swoops prevented Ohio State from winning their national championship. But Katie Smith was a freshman on that team. Let's say her collegiate stats are good. She wouldn't be considered among the GOATs collegiately, but her professional career, I think her professional career stacks up with anybody on the women's game. So, but she's my all-time favorite women's basketball player, collegiately, professionally. It is Katie Smith. Katie Smith, but the GOATs, those are my GOATs. With again, if Caitlynn's able to win a championship this year, like I said, I may have to swap out one of these for Caitlynn. But that's the only main thing missing for me is she doesn't have the NCAA championship when you stack it up against all these other great players. And fair or not, like I said, they played on loaded teams. She hasn't. That's why I say if she's able to win it, given her current makeup of her team roster, she would automatically be elevated. But that is my take on all of that. Again, my very, very, very first live stream. I thought it was appropriate given the upcoming game and how big the game is. My takes on that game, or Gates on my little 2 cents on the GOAT and how the tournament might play out. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you intrigued you enough to watch some of my other content, especially if I got any Buckeye fans on here. Like I said, I am going to be doing more stuff in terms of just talking collegiately, college sports. Like I try to grow my channel, baby steps. So again, I hope you enjoyed it. Hope you hit that like button. I hope you check me out again to subscribe. And with that, put it in your comments on your way out if you like to, how you think the Big Ten's going to do in the Big Ten tournament, your thoughts on the GOAT conversation, your thoughts on the game. Or do folks that saw some of my points earlier, just to recap for some folks who are just chiming in. I said some of the keys to the game for me in terms of Iowa, Caitlynn needs to get some help. She's able to get some help. I think Iowa has a good chance to win the game. If she doesn't, I think Ohio State will have a chance to take them to go into Iowa and win. I think Ohio State was the last Big Ten team to go in there and beat Iowa. So again, just interested in seeing what some of your guys' takes are on the game, what you think Iowa needs to do. For any Iowa fans that might be hearing, what you think Ohio State needs to do for the upcoming game, and how that's going to play into the March Madness and into the big dance in and of itself. Is South Carolina unbeatable? I don't believe they are as good as last year. You think they're beatable? All depends on the matchups, and I think the Big Ten teams have the best chance of anyone of beating them, because I don't think LSU can. LSU couldn't take them last year, and like I said, LSU supposedly gotten better, and LSU still can't beat South Carolina this year. Even though LSU supposedly playing better now, but they brought in what's supposed to be an all-star team, Angel Reese, Haley Van Lith, Morrow. They still can't beat South Carolina. I think the teams with the best chance of beating South Carolina reside in the Big Ten. But again, that could be the Big Ten homer in me. But I do think we have the chance to do it, like was done. Big Ten knocked South Carolina off last year, and I think Ohio State has the team to do it this year because of that press. I think Iowa has the team to do it because you have the megastar. And then Indiana's a good team, so I think the Big Ten's well positioned to do well in the dance. But Caitlynn, she needs help. She needs help not only in today's game, but moving forward. She needs to get her someone consistently to help her. And if she's able to do that, I think Iowa has a good chance to winning. Even though, like I said, for today's game, my head says Iowa because of all the things going on in Iowa City today at Carver Hawkeye Arena. But my heart, the homer in me says Ohio State's going to go in there and pull out a close game. We'll see how that plays out. And then again, go if she's able to get Iowa anywhere near the NCAA championship, I think that just elevates her status already. Because like I said, where would Iowa be without her? I won't say a sub 500. I won't say a 500 team, but they're definitely not where they definitely never get to the number 2 ranking in the nation. They definitely don't get the NCAA championship name next year. And like some people take that in consideration when they talk about GOAT. She's done more with this team. She doesn't have the titles, but look what she's done with this team. This team would be literally no place without her. And again, you literally have to look no further than that Nebraska game. Because I really do think it may not have done it purposely, but I do think they shut her down in that fourth quarter and let Nebraska. And I don't say let Nebraska storm back because Nebraska, I said, made some big plays, but I do think she wanted to break the record at home, and she thought her teammates could hold on, and they couldn't. So I think that speaks volumes of just the makeup of Iowa team and what she's playing with, because that's the same Nebraska team who, less than a week later, they literally could not get the ball over half court against Ohio State. And the same Nebraska team that she had her way with for 3 quarters. And then, like I said, I don't blame her. I would want to score the thing to break the record at home, but you can't. I just find it hard to believe that Nebraska was able to stop her for a full 12 minutes. when you had an Ohio State team full of defensive stars, and she went off against 45 and might do so again today. Go off against a team of Ohio State's defensive caliber that a team like Nebraska could hold her scoreless, regardless of how hot they were. So, and I think that just goes back into underlying my point about she doesn't have that much around her, because you would have thought they would have been able to hold on to a 14-point lead at Nebraska, and they couldn't do it. So again, where would they be without Caitlynn Clark? I do think that adds to her greatness, because she's literally doing it by herself, because she has no Cinzano this year, and no one's really stepped up on a consistent basis. So I don't know. I guess because when they have lost, I have gone on some of Iowa's things because I just to see what their thoughts were, and a lot of them are saying, no, Gabby Marshall, she hasn't performed as well this year as she had in previous years. Like I said, they always bring up Cinzano. They haven't been able to effectively replace her. Stokey, and I believe the other one's O'Grady. They haven't been consistent enough. And then the name Iowa folks always bring up is McCabe. How she never plays. Like every time I watch them play, I don't see anyone named McCabe out on the court. But apparently she's a really good shooter, and Lisa will not use her. But I don't know. I'm just speaking on what folks have mentioned on what they could do to get Caitlynn some help. And apparently, to a lot of Iowa fans, McCabe's that person who doesn't get any playing time. And Gabby hasn't performed as well this year as she has last year. And Martin's been inconsistent. So if she can get her some help, Caitlynn can take this team a long way, because a mega star, which she is capable of doing stuff like that. But I said if she's able to do that, it changes the whole GOAT conversation. Like for me personally, just when you talk about the greats of the greats, I try to take into team accomplishments as well, and those start. And then you got to bring in how many NCAA titles you got, conference championships, because again, just shows Caitlynn. I believe the game is on Fox. NBA La Chilena. Yeah, I believe the game is on Fox. Unlike their first game, which was on Peacock, I believe, and a lot of folks are mad they couldn't watch anything on Peacock. People do not like. I do believe this game coming up is going to be on Fox, so a lot more eyes will be on the game. Much bigger platform for all the players involved, and I'm sure Caitlynn is going to deliver. She is in the quest to break Pete Maravich's record, so that's going to be a highlight of the game as well. To see that she's going to become the all-time Division I NCAA scoring leader, men's, women's, period. It's going to have her name at the top. And like I said, I wish she would have came back to put that score so out of reach. It'll just be a thing of legends. Mike, I don't think she come back. I don't think she believes she has the roster. But best thing, if she would have came back with USC and UCLA coming into the conference next year, we might see it this year in the tournament. But see her and Juju Watkins go at it, that would be something. That would be a really good matchup to watch. Her and Juju go at it for a couple games. But she's doing what's best for her and moving on to the WNBA. And she's putting a lot of energy and effort into Iowa. I think she's somewhat elevated the Iowa program during her stay here, but ultimately she doesn't have the roster around her to do stuff. And she's losing a lot. Iowa's losing a lot this year, and I think she saw the writing on the wall and said it's best to take my talents and go on to the WNBA and try my chances there. So this is her last shot at the NCAA championship. And like I said, if she's able to pull that off, I think it changes the conversation a lot in terms of GOAT. Greatest of all time, because like I mentioned, those other players, they have multiple championships, but they're on loaded teams. And that's the only thing separating her from them, in my opinion, is she doesn't have that championship, which I do tend to utilize. And when I go to separating the greats from the greats from the greats, you gotta pick something to pit one above the other. And for me, it's team accomplishments in terms of NCAA champions, because they all have the individual glory, they all have the individual hardware. It's how does that translate to the team dynamics? regardless of the roster being loaded or not, did you get your team to an NCAA championship? Did you get your team to regular season championships? And just again to highlight her thing, I think Caitlynn Clark, even in the Big Ten, since she's been here, she's had one Big Ten title, and she shared that for Ohio State a couple years ago. I think Indiana won it outright last year, and of course Ohio State's going to win it outright this year. So, and again, it goes back to the folks around her. I don't think she has the roster around her to get the team to where it needs to be, because it's hard to do it by yourself, regardless of megastar or not. It's hard to do stuff by yourself. And that's what she's working with. She's doing a lot of this by herself. So I feel for her in a way, because she is carrying the load. Her back has to be sore because she is carrying the load for this Iowa team. It's her last hurrah, so to speak. So she might go out blazing. I'm assuming she's going to do her best to get them to that number 1 seed. So that's why I feel she's going to be extra motivated to go out and beat Ohio State today. It's going to be a really good game. And might see Ohio State again in the Big Ten championship game, and who knows how things play out. May see them again in the NCAA tournament if all things go according to Big Ten plans. And they're able to get as many teams as they got to the Elite Eight this year as they got there last year. But I think Clark is a phenomenal. I would pay. That's another reason because I live out on the West Coast. So I was hoping she would come back just in case Iowa was going to come out and play SC or UCLA. I was going to do my best to get a ticket, because I would pay to watch Caitlynn Clark play. Period. I would pay to watch her play. Problem is, her tickets cost too damn much now. That got to be one of the hardest tickets, period, is to see Caitlynn Clark play. But I would pay to see her play, and I just, and like I said, being out on West Coast, that was my chance to see if I was going to come out here and play USC or UCLA. I was going to get a ticket to that game. That's why I'm sort of disappointed she's leaving, but she got to do what she got to do. But again, for those chiming in, Lady, thank you for taking again. This was my very first broadcast live stream. So again, appreciate you guys taking the time to watch a little bit of it. I am going to post this later on my thing if you want to see the whole preview in its entirety. And if you do, check out some of my other stuff, my other content on my house. Post heavily about Ohio State, obviously. I'm like an Ohio State fan first, Big Ten fan second, then just a fan of college sports in general, trying to grow my channel out. So all the likes, subscriptions I can get, fully appreciate it. Thank you again for checking in. And that said, I'm going to go get ready for the game and might do a follow-up. So we'll stay posted, and we'll see if I'm going to do a post-game wrap-up on how the game plays out. And if so, like my Ohio State fans, you guys know my sign-off, OHIO, go Bucks. I'm out, and thank you again. Appreciate you guys.